We have breaking news. A jury has acquitted a former Ohio police officer who shot and killed a pregnant woman in a confrontation over alleged shoplifting. The 21-year-old was accused of shoplifting when Officer Connor Grubb approached her car. He says her car then rolled towards him and he shot in self-defense. The family of Takaya Young became incredibly emotional just moments after the judge read that verdict.
We, the jury, upon our oaths of law and evidence in this case, find the defendant not guilty of involuntary manslaughter. Mr. Grubb, you're...
The jury found Connor Grubb not guilty on all of the charges. He was facing up to life in prison if convicted. ABC legal contributor Brian Buckmeyer is here with more on that. Brian, this incident was caught on body cam video. So how did the evidence play out in this case? Are you surprised by the verdict?
I'm not surprised by the verdict. I think ultimately it came down to whether or not you believe the officer should have stood in front of that vehicle. And once you get there and you think he does have the right to do so as part of his procedure, whether or not they argued it was proper or improper. But if that's what the jury believed, then self-defense becomes very easy because as the defense argued, that vehicle was a weapon that could have harmed him and therefore he is justified in using deadly force. And so it seemed to make sense at least how the defense argued it and the result that we see.
Based on the reaction, obviously it looks like Takaya Young's family does not think this verdict makes sense. Do they have any other legal recourse now?
Not from a criminal standpoint. He's acquitted of all the charges that could be associated with this case. We know that there have been investigations. There possibly could be civil litigation as well if they haven't filed already. Don't forget that when it comes to a criminal case, the burden of proof is much higher, proof beyond a reasonable doubt, than that of a civil case. And so we have seen in the past where an individual is acquitted of criminal charges but found liable under civil allegations. And so if that option is still open to them, they could pursue that.
All right, Brian Buckmeyer, thank you.
Unfortunately, that is true. We saw that in the O.J. Simpson trial. I believe it was Ron Goldman filed on behalf of his son. The father, Goldman, sued O.J. Simpson and won. So even though O.J. was found not guilty in the criminal case, he was still found liable in the civil judgment, which is nonsense because the civil should be able to follow the criminal. However, in this case, of course, they're going to sue him because he's white. They're black. If the cop was black, they wouldn't have even bothered. This would have never made it to trial. But in the past, we've rewarded claims of racism monetarily to inspire more. It's all about a systematic degradation of the United States and its credibility, but also amongst the people here to keep trying to chip away at the system. Luckily, right now, we have an administration in place that is looking to reinforce the United States instead of make it weaker. A lot of this started with Barack Obama. He literally made all the racial issues in this country explode. And, you know, then when you look at it in hindsight, he's our first gay president. He's like, if Brigitte Macron is a man, so is Mike Obama. These agendas have been put in place to break down one of the most powerful countries in the history of the world. And a typical war against us, you're not going to win. So they're going to have to use manipulation and different types of tactics. I believe that just this whole push of racism in the media is just another form of warfare against us. And yes, they've rewarded too many people in the past with nonsensical claims against law enforcement. This lady's in the courtroom screaming because her daughter died while committing a crime. They're not the first. I'm watching this other black family talking about suing a man who their kids broke into his house and he killed them. Now they're like, oh, you know, you shouldn't have killed them for breaking into your home, and they were armed. And that just shows, but they're suing him because he's white. And the media is trying to hype that story up and give it more airplay. And they're just trying to push these divisions. You know, in the real world, when you walk outside and touch grass, it's not like that. There's not a bunch of racial issues in the United States. No one even cares about that stuff. It's really just exasperated in the media, but primarily between that one group of in the United States, the Black American culture, their society. It's a very inclusive society. So there's not very much outside contact. They kind of just huddle around each other. And it's like one of the largest echo chambers you've ever seen in your life. And they reinforce each other's nonsense. And that's where a lot of this blatant disrespect for law enforcement, or this belief that you can just create your own laws in front of the police on the spot just because it suits your agenda. Well, actually, I don't have to give you my ID because, according to me, you have to ask me within the first 30 seconds, and you have to be at the passenger window. You're on my driver's side window, so I don't have to. And I'm noticing the mental gymnastics, and I'm like, what world do you live in where any of this makes sense? And then I find out they went to an HBCU. They grew up in an all-Black area. They only know Black people. So it's like they have this own separate society that they live in. But once they come in contact with reality, it's a head-on collision, and it doesn't work well in their favor all the time. For the longest time, there were things like redlining, which kind of kept Black people in their own neighborhoods. They would call them ghettos. But it wasn't just to protect, Black people from white people on the outside, but it was also to protect people on the outside from the Blacks. And you can kind of see that when you look at the culture, every single day, the violence between them is excessive. You want to contain that and let them kind of have at it. The problem is you can't really stop people from moving within the United States if you're a citizen. And a lot of those systems that they had in place to keep them in their own areas, which is funny because nowadays they say they prefer to be around each other, which is a weird change from the 60s and 70s, but I digress. However, they do become a danger to the outside society because they only know each other. It's like coming in contact with aliens, and they don't know the rules of engagement. And you see these, like, I literally, if you follow my Snapchat, not Snapchat, you follow my TikTok, follow my Instagram, I'm posting thousands and thousands of hours of body cam footage lately. Why is it so many women having all these crazy, insane interactions with the police? Now, not just, but when you look at, okay, let's be more specific. Which group of women is having all these interactions with the police? And then you watch the news and you're like, wow, the same group of women that's having a lot of these interactions with the police that are going bad are actually having these interactions with restaurants, businesses, stores, the fucking airport, everybody. But that's what happens when you self-segregate and there's no one around to tell you otherwise. You got to think about it. From birth until adulthood, they've only been around 98% other Black people. They have no idea how the real world works. And then if you go into an HBCU college, that makes you even worse. Because now all you can do become is an activist. You don't really learn anything in school. You learn how to protest and be angry. And that's why every interaction, you're so insecure about how you look. Even the ones who are super light-skinned and look like they're white, they talk about how they feel discriminated against white people. And I'm like, and I will tell them, I'm like, but you're whiter than white people. What discrimination are you talking about? And it's all mental. But again, all that self-segregating and putting themselves in their own little bubbles, when they come in contact with reality, like law enforcement or airport personnel, it's a crash. It's a head-on collision and explosion. And it doesn't turn out well. People keep telling me, but Rico, she was pregnant. What difference does that make? When you decided to not comply with law enforcement, you're gambling with your life. When you try to harm law enforcement, well, now you forfeit your life. I'm a regular civilian. If you use your car as a weapon, that's a 2,000-pound weapon that you can use. If you try to hit me with your car on purpose because you're mad at me or whatever, I'm going to do the same thing as these cops. I'm not going to sit there and say, oh, well, she's black and pregnant. No. And it's not my business. That's your business. You have to protect your unborn child. That's not my responsibility. My responsibility is to myself. You know, and everybody keeps saying, well, the stuff that she was stealing wasn't worth her life. Why didn't she consider that? Instead of stealing, why not go work? You know, and I keep telling people, what do you think the rest? Okay, it's them versus the rest of us. If I'm a business owner, if I own a store, you want me to just keep replacing the items that you're stealing? No, I'd rather you just start replacing your relatives. You're not understanding how this works. I've earned it. It's mine. People want to sit here and talk about millionaires and billionaires because they don't want to put in the same amount of work. And they're trying to find excuses. Oh, maybe it's nepotism. Maybe it's this, or maybe you just don't want to do anything. You know, there was a girl who was on here giving me some kind of a lecture on my, what did she give me? She says I had a superiority complex, basically trying to call me some kind of like brown supremacist or something. And anyway, her camera fell. This pretty little bitch lives in her fucking car. And I'm like, well, why am I talking to you? You're one of those people that felt so entitled that you didn't want to work. And I bet you felt so entitled that once somebody helped you get an apartment, you didn't want to pay the rent. And you didn't want to pay this, and you didn't want to pay that. And you're looking for any excuse to get around being responsible for yourself and working. And you project onto the rest of us in society as if we're the reason for your personal decisions. That's not going to fly. Now, look, let's watch the actual body cam footage from that day. It's a clear-cut case of self-defense on the police's end. But, I mean, I'll be honest, this is more so a suicide situation. She knew there was going to be consequences. She just didn't care. She was just hoping that the police would be so afraid of getting sued that they'd just let her run over them. And guess what? She rolled the dice and she hit a 7.
Tarkia Young, a 21-year-old pregnant woman, was shot to death by police officer.
Get out of the car. Get out of the car. Get out of the car.
273. I take a 29, 3705 Managua, 3705. A female is hallucinating. What's the last for 10?
Out of the car. Out of the car. Out of the car.
Why do the police have to keep telling them the same thing over and over? Why does he have to keep saying that? Why is he required to keep saying, get out of the car, get out of the car? If she was white, he would have asked her 1.5 times, then he would have busted that fucking car window. If this person was white, this conversation would have never even happened. It would have never even gotten this far. But the police are so afraid to do their job and enforce laws against black people because of, well, they might get sued, they might get fired, they might end up going to trial like this man. You know, like I said, it's a fatigue. You know, when I say the country is outraged because our heroes, right? The men and women who sign up to protect us and who run towards the gunfire instead of away from it, like the civilians, now they are being put on trial for just doing their job, which is protecting us from other criminals. And that's disheartening. And I'm tired of it. I'm sick of it. These people should be praised. You know, at one point in time, I used to believe all that, what is it, defund the police, and we don't need police, we'll police ourselves. I'm from LA. I was there in 2020. And I remember I seen there was like this huge march down Spring Street. And I walked outside and I got in it and I was like, yeah, you know, I'm thinking, okay, cool. We're protesting against something. It was about the George Floyd. And I remember somebody behind me had a sign that said, "Eat the rich." And I was like, man, I started looking at the crowd. I'm like, wow, these people have a lot of different colored hair. And I was like, oh man, I wonder who they consider. Like, what's the threshold? What's rich to these people? Because these are obviously like communist types, Marxists. They don't work. So I'm pretty sure their threshold for what they consider rich is fairly low. They saw a Tesla that wasn't even the big one like I have. They saw like a small Tesla, and they like surrounded it and started kicking it, talking about those people are rich. And I was like, well, then what do you think about me? Like, I mean, if they see, all my different lofts that I have right where they're protesting in my cars, well, they're going to try to set me on fire. And then that's when I realized I'm not one of them. I'm not. I work. My family didn't come to this country to beg. We came to this country to provide for ourselves and take care of our family and to become something greater than ourselves. It goes God, country, family, So we came over here for that. And then I felt like I was betraying everything that my family went through to give me more opportunities by sitting out here and just squandering it all away because I want to be a follower. It's ridiculous. But I mean, I don't understand. Why do the police have to beg these people for their ID or argue with them for an hour before they can finally arrest them? Because one small move, there's going to be some ambulance chasing piece of shit civil rights lawyer that's going to jump in here and say, oh, wait a minute. You took your left foot went in front of your right foot, and you're supposed to go right foot, left foot. That's in your policy. So you got to give this person some money. And it's like, okay. And now this cop might lose their job. We need more police. We don't need less. And I always say it all the time. If I have to choose between the criminal community and law enforcement, I'm going with law enforcement every day. I had a taste. The reason I moved out of California was because I remember my neighbor called the police when her boyfriend was trying to kick her door in during the lockdown and after the George Floyd riots, and they never came. She called them back to back screaming, and the police never showed up. They came, I think, the next day, but by then she's in the hospital. The dude got in. He didn't kill her. He could have. But I know what it's like to live in a society where there's no more police and the insane asylum, the criminals just run wild and they become the police. And I don't want to live in that world. I don't. So I don't feel any sympathy or sadness. This person forfeit. She suicided herself. She should have complied. Now, if you don't like the laws of this country, move to another country. When I didn't like California and how things were going, I left the state. And when I thought that there might be a chance Kamala Harris could win, I left the country. If this particular group that has been historically having run-ins with the law, don't respect the law, don't respect the country, don't like the country, call the country racist, escape. Run to another country and live there. Why stay here where you're going to get put in prison or executed when you could just escape to somewhere else better? We're not going to give up. We're not going to burn the Constitution because a pregnant girl decides to get herself killed by the police. And oh man, maybe we should get rid of the guns. Maybe we should get rid of police because this criminal decided to run a cop over. You have assholes and elbows mixed up.
I'm in back to service 1828.
Get out of the car. Then get out. Go. Then get out.
Get out of the car.
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 Shots, your shot fired.
Stop the goddamn car. Stop the goddamn car.
We're going to have a 34 on 73, couple now, keep it to be out. 5991, 7 in a row.
No parental guidance, no training, growing up in a echo chamber of blackness where you perpetuated victimhood mentality where you're taught by your own relatives that white people are better than you, and you're at the bottom of the barrel, and it's because of racism is why you should steal. That does a number on the mind of anybody. I didn't even know this, but they're taught this at home. This isn't because reality teaches you racism against white people. Their parents taught them that, and their grandparents taught them that. I didn't even know that until I became an adult. I'm like, shit, your grandmother did a number on you. Your mom did a number on you. You know, and I've met people, they've never even met someone white in their whole life. And they have this unsubstantiated fear of the KKK and the Proud Boys, but everyone they've ever met in their life that was murdered by somebody was murdered by a black Crip or Blood. In this situation, the police did what was necessary. She was a danger to the public as well. She's also a thief. I don't have much sympathy for them. There's nothing you can really say to justify her actions. I just hate that for 2 years they made this man's life a living hell when he should have been congratulated for doing the tough part. They begged this woman to give him her ID. They asked her to stop. She told them no. The mother failed her. There was no father. The mother failed her. The mother failed her from the beginning, and her mother failed her, and it's went on as far back as they can remember. It's basically a long line of failures in their family, of people who think that they think the rules don't apply to them, and that they can just get away with doing whatever they want to. You know, if times are so hard that you feel like you need to steal, then you're gonna have to figure that out. You know, people don't understand that's what comes with freedom. With freedom comes responsibility. That means you're responsible for taking care of yourself, figuring out how you can earn so that you don't have to steal. Now, if you want to be dependent on the government, well, then that's not freedom. If you want someone else to pay for all your stuff, that's slavery. If you want a master, you want a daddy that's going to take care of you and tell you what to do and give you free stuff, that's akin to slavery. You can't scream about freedom and how much you want freedom, but then you're begging with your other hand, asking for free shit. No, you're free to take care of yourself. You're free to be responsible for yourself. This is not reparations where you just go into stores and steal. That's just an excuse. And we're not accepting those anymore. We're going to need a heavier hand to get things back in order and to get things back in line. We're going to need much more enforcement, but we're going to absolutely have to figure out a way to get rid of birthright citizenship. You know, and the way it should work is past a certain amount of convictions, you should lose your privilege of being an American citizen, and you should be expelled to whatever country we have a treaty with. Send people back to Africa. Send them to South Sudan, where there's no white people, there's no ICE, there's no Trump, there's no white supremacy. You can go live and be a criminal there. But, you know, letting people commit crimes and then we send them on a vacation, which we call prison. But is prison even that bad? You get to watch TV, you don't have to work, you get fed, showers, bed. It's like sending these people on a vacation. So no wonder that the prison is not even a deterrent anymore. But maybe losing your citizenship and being expelled, maybe that'll help. And I think we should rebuke birthright citizenship. People take American citizenship for granted. That's why they don't mind these illegals jumping the border, because they don't think it's a big deal. They don't appreciate the privilege of being an American citizen. I think that might help this huge epidemic we have with crime. And unfortunately, the crime is all centered around one community only, which it's embarrassing, to say the least. Like and subscribe, share the video. Let me know if you agree or disagree. I'll be back on shortly and on another live. And remember, America first, America only.
I've been needing to find a new apartment, which has not been easy with credit as bad as mine. Luckily, I found cosigning.com. They connected me with a cosigner who helped me get my dream apartment for me and my dog. I just paid a small fee and was able to move in fast. Get the cosigner you need for the apartment you want. Check out cosigning.com today.